Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Resilient Immigrant Knowledge is Power series. I'm so excited today. My name is Nancy Taye Aragbaye, and I am your host this evening. I have the privilege of interviewing and hosting these amazing three guests. Tonight, we have an exciting topic for you where we're going to be talking about navigating a new country as a young African immigrant. Now, I mentioned earlier today that my parents were immigrants. So I've always been just interested in hearing the stories of those who've been able to navigate this country with grace. So, without further ado, I want to invite you all to share who you are, what you do before we get in today's discussion. And we'll start with Soye.
Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here. And I'm honored to be able to speak to you all. And thanks to the Resilient Immigrant, team for inviting me to speak. My name is Abisoye Oloruntaba. Everyone calls me Soye for short. I am a software engineer. Been a software engineer now for about 20 years. Um, Mostly in the financial services fintech space, and just happy and excited to share my journey through navigating all of the challenges of being a young African immigrant.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much for sharing who you are. And may I have Amarachi, please?
Hi everyone, how are you? It's lovely to be here today. I am excited, talk about my journey so far, and also any questions, and also to and hear the wonderful stories of everyone. As we're all immigrants, to America at some point, right? Everyone in America is an immigrant. It just depends on when you came here. But My name is Dr. Wije. I am a board certified. Child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist. I am in the Maryland, DC area. I have been in medicine for, I don't know, 15 years now or something. I don't know, for a very, very long time. I migrated here also when I was pretty young. It's been a journey. I've been a journey woman, so it's been a journey. Yeah, that's me.
Thank you. Naya.
Thank you, Nancy. Just like Amarachi, I also migrated here um, at a very young age as well. And so I'm really looking forward to like sharing my journey and hearing the stories of Soye as well as Amarachi as we continue the session. A bit about me: I am a business professional and consultant, and I have a very diverse background. I've worked in multiple industries, but currently, pursuing a career within retail. So just looking forward to the rest of the session and sharing a little bit more about my journey as we go along.
Thank you so much. I truly believe in the power of stories. I believe it serves as a form of mentorship at times. And you all being in the positions you are, from being doctor and background in financial services and so forth, and just successful career professionals, I think it's important to always give back. And sometimes giving back is simply just sharing your journey. I'm interested to know if you all can just briefly share your story of moving to a new country, and what age were you? What prompted you to move in the direction that you did? And I'm happy to have anyone just start, whoever it touches in the spirit. Can you start by sharing your story?
Let's go first.
Well, I'm assuming.
I'll go first.
Okay, I was gonna comment.
I'll go first. So I immigrated to the United States with my family, my mother, and siblings in '98. I was 12, so adolescent years, which is fraught with its own set of changes and challenges anyway. And to throw in the mix of, moving to a whole new country just exacerbated those changes. So, um, you know, what are some of the challenges? I could probably list a few, but the first one was just it was January of '98. So, like New York City winter. So, coming from Nigeria, hot Lagos to very cold New York City, January was the first shocker. I don't want to say it's a challenge, but yeah, it was definitely a big shocker. And then certain I would say differences in cultural norms as a teen that I wouldn't say they one is better than the other, but they are differences. It's helpful to acknowledge those differences. One, just purely in education, the fact that there were no uniforms, right? So I was used to wearing uniforms to school and just sort of mentally just knowing what I'm going to look like on a daily basis to attend school. So that was the first thing, first shocker. Then there was, the norm amongst teens where we're coming from Nigeria, where your popularity was earned by, who was the first, second, or third academically in class, and that not necessarily being what your social capital, in your adolescence, what earned you social capital amongst your peers here. So that was another big sort of shock in transition. And then, teaching styles, right, of your teachers. So I was very much used to certain teaching styles of my, teachers, etc., coming from, education in Nigeria and having to, just understand, the new teaching style and just sort of like that relationship between teachers and students and how they related to each other. Far more, I would say, democratically aligned, and it was more of a democracy and less of a sort of like I'm telling you to do this and you just do it, right? So those are some of the key ones. There are others as well, like even just how you related to your peers and friendships, right? Um, things, concepts like sleepovers and things like that. Having to explain such things to my parents, sleepover where, like, if you must come back home and be home and sleep in your own home on a daily basis. So those were, I would say, some of the big challenges and differences that I would say I faced when I moved here.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Dr. Amarachi, tell me a little bit about your story. What age did you move here? What prompted you to? And give me a challenge that you faced when you first got to this country.
Okay. So I moved here when I was 15. And I moved alone. So a lot of people, they had the opportunity of, having family around or, coming to meet their parents, right? Because maybe their parents had been here, they were in school in Africa, and then their parents sent for them, or everyone was moving together. So I had finished secondary school, and then I took a gap year to do my SATs and the other exams. So I did all of that, and because from college, my family had kind of decided that we would do our university and our further education in America. So took the gap year, I did the SATs, the TOEFLs, I passed all of that, and then I moved here. When we moved, I was 15, right? And I would say the biggest challenge, even before I moved, the biggest challenge as an Igbo girl, because everything comes into play, right? Gender, race, culture, things like that. And I'm also a first child. Um, and Nigerian tradition is the daughters typically stay home until they're like 21 or something like that, right? So that in itself, the concept of me at 15, not even 16 yet, right? At 15 years old, going to, I mean, right now we have like direct flights from DC to Lagos, right? Back then it's, you had to like hop, at least one flight and then stay for like 6 hours and all of this stuff. It's not an easy access, right? I went to secondary school in Lagos. My family lived in Lagos. So, we're kind of together in the state, right? And so the idea that the first child, the daughter and only girl, leaving at such a young age, I remember people had conversations with my dad, and they were like, you know what, your daughter is never going to come back. She's never going to come back. She's going to go to America and she's going to spoil, right? So that was the first challenge, right? So before I left, there was a lot of discussions about that. And, just me assuring myself, first of all, because at the end of the day, we all have you have a duty to yourself first before you have duty to your parents, your family, your siblings, and things like that, right? Assuring myself and having trust in myself that no matter what situation I was going to be in, I will always stay true to myself and my morals, right? Because I'm my foundation. So, which is, what my parents and my family had strongly imbibed in me for those first 15 years, right? But of course, that's not, you can imagine, I mean, some of us are parents here, right? And thinking about, having now, like learning like your 15-year-old just go like, across the country. I mean, back then, cell phones were not as common as they are right now, right? Emails were not as common, all of these things were not, as great as they were, as they are right now. That was the first challenge. Then coming here, so I did have like relatives who lived in America, but I was to live on campus in college, right? Um, and my campus was in a remote area of Maryland, so it's not a place that I could just drive to Walmart, right? Or my family, where like my closest relative is like 3-4 hours away, right? So it's not something like I could be like, I want to go home for the weekend and then just hop, go see them. So so right off the bat, I was already dealt with kind of these circumstances where I had to figure it out and I had to navigate it, right? And I had to figure out how I was going to eat, where I was, I mean, we had tuition on board. I stayed on campus for my first semester. But again, I had to figure out safety, right? The safety is a big thing where, everyone sees the movies or when we're younger and everyone is shooting and all of that stuff. So, those were the bigger challenges that, I think that, I had to face, and I had to figure out how to navigate those circumstances being a minor. I couldn't do a lot of things because I was a minor and I had no one to sign anything for me.
I was getting ready to say you were adulting. You were adulting at a very young age in a completely new country.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a major challenge. And I definitely want to come back to that. It's really interesting. So, way you came in a little bit younger, you came in still as a child, but you were an adult when you navigated to this country. And I definitely want to pull from both your stories. I want to pass it over to Naya. And I would like to know, the beginning of your story. What age were you and what prompted you to come to this country? And what is one challenge that you faced when arriving?
17. This was 2011. And very similar to Amarachi, I had taken a gap year to, finish secondary school, taking a gap year to write my SATs and then make the transition to the United States. My story is kind of different because I had my siblings here already for a couple of years. So I wouldn't say that, come here started from the scratch in terms of like knowledge and things to know. But I will say like the challenges that I faced definitely was culture shock. That's like the very first thing is how do you, it's more of the social part. because I'm a very quiet person. Back in India, I was reserved. I was young, didn't really understand the concept around like expressing yourself in classrooms and public speaking. Like those were the big challenges that I faced when I moved to the United States, and trying to navigate your freshman year and your all through to junior and senior year. So I would say like those were the big ones for me from a social point of view. Is just like public speaking, having imposter syndrome, being able to express yourself in the classroom in front of your professors, because you're smart. Like we're all intelligent people, like we're hustlers, in our blood. And it's just like coming in front of the classroom and just being able to just say the things that you need to say and express yourself is like a big challenge for me. I mean, I've had to learn throughout the years, and I've gotten way better and gotten resources and tools to help me get there. But I'll say like those were some of the challenges that I faced, in addition to what Soye and Amara actually mentioned.
Yeah, I'm literally like putting myself in your shoes. What was I doing at like 13 and 15 and 17? And it certainly wasn't navigating a whole entire new country. I was playing basketball. That's what I was doing in high school. But I want right now, I want to talk to the child, and I also want to talk to the parent. So go back to the 20 something years. We're not going to reveal age here. Go back to the years, the 10 years, of 20 years, however long it was. What would you say to the child? Like, what advice would you give them as far as like navigating the educational system? And then what advice would you give to the adult? I mean, I'm sorry, to the parent. So the age that you came, what would you say to the child at that age? And what would you say to the parent? I think it's really important as immigrants. You all have been able to navigate and do very well in your careers and so forth. But I think advice is so important. And you all came and kind of had to figure it out and navigate. And so certainly want to pass this knowledge down to our audience. So can you share, what would you say to the child and what would you say to the parent?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, to the child, I'll say, embrace the change. One of the biggest indicators of success in life is your ability to adapt in how you navigate change, because the world is ever changing. So, like, I would have told my younger self to embrace that change, because, in embracing that change and navigating the change, I'll build this resilience to be able to navigate changes that would come or I'll be confronted with in life. So that is one thing I would definitely tell 12-year-old me, for sure. What I would tell the parent, I would have to say that, my parents were very, very supportive and, in their own way, but there's always that barrier that comes from not having, nearly the same perspective. Fortunately for me, my father also was a young immigrant to America. So my father actually left Nigeria for America for college when he was 16 in the 70s. So one of the earlier, immigrants, but of course they had no desire to stay here. They went back to Nigeria after college and, came back later on when, things didn't work out as planned. But I think I was able to sort of tap into that a little bit with my father, where he had a little bit of that perspective, and so I had that support system. But what would I say to the parents? I would say, understand and recognize that as much as it's a transition for you, it's probably a bigger transition for an adolescent, right? They're already going through a lot of change, and now you throw this change, which oftentimes they have no input in that decision. So first acknowledge that and acknowledge their feelings. Something that sometimes Nigerian parents aren't great at. So let's first acknowledge that. Be intentional about and be observant about how they are navigating that change and take action to mitigate any negative impact from said change. I know it can be very, very easy to just like get into the bubble of trying to focus on their own individual sort of career progression or starting a whole new career. Used to be this and that where you're from, and now all of a sudden you need to start and pick up, start life all over in a new country, and it's very easy to be stuck in that hustle and bustle and ignore your legacy, in some ways. And so it's important to be intentional about paying attention and recognizing that it's not one size fits all. You can have if you have multiple kids, one could handle the change very well or need a certain sets of support and tools to navigate the change, while others need something else entirely, or may not need anything at all. So don't paint all of your children with a broad brush and say, oh yeah, one is okay, so obviously they're all okay. I was the first of four, so how I handled it may be different from how my siblings handled it. So that's another advice I would give to the parents.
Thank you. Naya, what would you say to your younger self and to your parent at the time?
Yeah, that's a great question. As Soya was answering through his own journey, I just thought about like two things for me at least. It's like being open. I feel like I struggle with that, like in the very first maybe year, in freshman year, just like not being open solely because initially I talked about imposter syndrome and feeling like, hey, are they going to relate to your own journey? Are they going to relate to like you spent 17 years in a different country? Are they going to think you're weird and stuff like that? So a lot of those thoughts really hindered me from being open and really taking the time to immerse myself in the freshman experience. I mean, not too much on the extreme social side, but like experience just being a freshman in school, for example. I'm talking from a perspective of one who came in for school, and just being open more and meeting up with people after classes, or if in your workplace, being social and engaging with people, and figuring out how you can adapt to a different culture and also adapt to like the lifestyle here. So I feel like if I were to go back in time, that's definitely one. And the second is like not being afraid to ask questions, especially to people who have been through similar journeys as you. So many times, like I was very fortunate to have my sister and my brother here when I moved. So like if I had a question, it's just a matter of phone call or text, like, hey, how do you do this? Or, when you did this, like, what did you do? I mean, not everyone is fortunate to have siblings or family here. So if you're in that position, like, don't be afraid to reach out to people, especially now there's like so many mediums. This is a platform, for example, to like reach out to people. Any of the speakers, I'm sure, would be willing to answer questions of how they navigated a challenge. Or sometimes even reaching out to random people on LinkedIn, some people might be willing to, share their own journey. So I feel like those two definitely are on top of my list of if I had to go back and, talk to my younger self. I would say be open and just don't be scared to ask questions if you're stuck or you just need general advice. In terms of parents, my situation is kind of different because my parents were in Nigeria when I moved to United States. Well, so there's a lot they don't see. All that they know is like, you're okay, you're eating, you're going to class, good. That's all I need to know. But if I were to put myself in the position, a different position, I would say probably just understanding that there are struggles that your child is facing. They might not talk to you about it because, like, okay, you're not going to understand because you're not here, but just like really poking and just making sure from a level of, are they being able to adapt into this new country? Like being able to ask those questions and really poke at those types of questions and seeing like how they can be supported, whether it's resources, whether it's like, oh, I know this auntie and uncle that are in the United States that can connect you with them so that, you have a point of contact and stuff like that. So at least for me, that's a very hard question to answer because my parents were in Nigeria. Um, and that's pretty much a point that I can think of that might be helpful to someone who's in different type of situation than me.
Yeah, it sounds like, for parents who may be
Yeah.
in another country, like know your child.
Yeah, if
Really.
they're acting different, like you should know like there's something wrong, and being able to just ask the question and keep probing until like they open up and stuff. I know
Yeah.
that it's really challenging for parents who some people don't see their kids for like 10 years, and they go abroad and they don't see their kids for a long time.
Wow.
And so the only medium you have is really a phone call or video chat or whatever mediums that you use to communicate with your family. But that's all they have. And so all that is left is for you to just make sure that you know your child and you're asking the right questions and making sure that they're okay mentally, and they're just mentally sound, which is such a big thing, being in the country here by yourself if you don't have family.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Dr. Amarachi. I'm very curious to know what you would say, because again, you're the 15-year-old who's in college and becomes an adult without being an adult. What would you just say to someone in your shoes, and what advice would you give to a parent whose child is embarking on this journey?
I think, looking back, right? The biggest thing I would tell myself is it's okay, you're safe,
Mm.
right? Because you have a child who is trying to be an adult and navigate the world and not get into trouble, right? To extract, like when like they beat it into your head, do not get into trouble, don't go to jail, right? Your African parents, like you're going to go to America, they'll put your ear on that, on that, right? So, when I first came, I was very uptight, right? I was very uptight. I was very, I was very, just again navigating, right? So I think that's the first thing I'll say. It's okay, you're safe. That's the first thing, because the safety was the biggest issue, like in terms of thinking about like a 15-year-old, like people getting kidnapped, right? Like you watch the American movies, all these horror movies, like people getting killed, people getting killed. So that was my biggest thing. When it comes to kind of academics, kind of how to navigate a life, right? So with now, when you come with an accent, right?
Yeah.
You all come with an accent. And many times, I mean, right now being cool, being Nigerian is cool, but a few years ago, being Nigerian was definitely not cool, right? You definitely sometimes could be called certain names. And they were not, like very nice, friendly names. So, just again, you're okay, and everything is fine, and you're prepared for this, right? So everything you're going through and everything that is put in your path, you're prepared for it. um any obstacle, you will find a way to move past it, right? So that's kind of what I would go back and tell, and tell my younger self. Plan, use all the resources, use your voice, open up, ask questions, right? Do the research. Don't take no, don't take the first no, right? Talk to more people, and and try to figure out what it is, whatever it is your goal is. As I said, I came for school. I didn't have anyone, opening the door. I would have killed to be in Naya's position, okay? Like have a brother, sister, hey, I took this English class, but again, right? So ask a lot of questions. You know, um, do the research. Keep, just continue. So that's probably what I would tell, my younger self. And then in terms of with parents, my parents also were and are still in Nigeria. And both of them parent very differently, right? And I do appreciate both of their parenting, because one is a little bit firmer and then the other one is a little bit like gentle. So if you're in a position where you're lucky to be able to have parents, again, they came here multiple times before, I came to school, we visited many times and stayed here. And again, they came here with me also. So if you're lucky to have parents who understand the system a little bit, right? It's easier to be able to communicate with them about certain things, certain things that you're experiencing. So with parents, it's be supportive, right? Be a guide. Your time is gone. Like whatever your dreams were, whatever you wanted to do, you should have done it. This is my time, right? So be a guide to your child's, goals, to your child's risk, to your child, whatever they want to do. Again, now, there's certain things, that are not acceptable, but just overall, that's probably what I would, be supportive, be a guide. It's very difficult already. And, we don't need anyone from thousands of miles making it more difficult too, right?
That is so true. And good segue. I want to pivot the conversation. I want to talk about peers. Peers are important. Naya, I want to talk about you're 17, your young adulthood. I'm sure you had your girls. There were things that you did on a regular basis. Probably hung out, did what 17-year-old girls do. How is it, or how was it when you came here, and how did you navigate like leaving your and I'm assuming you had friends, so
Yeah.
how was it leaving your peers in your group, and how were you able to navigate that, and were you able to maintain those relationships?
First and foremost, hard, very, very hard to move to a different country. Your goals and your priorities have changed now. And now you're just like, at least for me, from my experience, like I'm just like all in on like, I'm in the United States, I'm here for school. My parents have sacrificed certain things for me to be here. So that's my primary focus, is for me to go through this 4-year college program and do excellently well at it. So I think naturally, as time goes on, at the beginning it's cool, like you're trying to then Facebook was like really, the communication channel, you're trying to keep in touch and chat. But you're gonna find out that you just don't really have the time. There's the time difference, that really a big factor there. You just don't have the time. And as you go along, you're gonna see that it's gonna taper out to really core people and core friends who, on their part, they're also willing to keep in touch. Like friendship is not a one-way thing. It's like two ways. Two people are trying to make something work. So like if I'm putting in my own part, they should put their own part too, to like make this friendship last. So I would say like there are actually a bunch of people who I still keep in touch with from secondary school in Nigeria that I've been very fortunate to see, and even like go for their weddings and engagements and things like that. As it's amazing to be fortunate to have that experience. But it's an effort that you have to put on your own end, just because you're in different countries now and things like that. So I would say it was hard. It was hard for me, and now you're in a new country trying to make new friends, like meet new people, which means putting in also effort to be out there outside of your day-to-day classes and your educational engagements, to actually have a social life and meet people. So I came for school, so which is different. There's just so many opportunities for that, at least within the school. We had, I went to University of Oklahoma, so we had an African Christian fellowship, which is a good way to like stay engaged. And if you're a Christian, like still keep that connection with God. We had an African association. If you're trying to still keep in touch with the other Africans within your university. And then now it's more, you have Instagram, you have LinkedIn, you have all these different platforms. So like you are going to make friends, but you still need to put in the effort to keep the friends that you have. You can't keep everybody because like all our priorities change in life and our goals, and sometimes they misalign. So you are going to keep the ones that you can, and you're going to make new ones too. That as you go along the way, and as you go to school, if you're here for school, as you're going to school, if you're here for work, as you're going through your time at work. So that's my
Right.
experience.
Thank you for that. I do want to talk about new friends. I believe in new friends.
Yeah.
Old friends are great. You said it's harder to maintain that relationship.
Yeah.
It does take two. The reality is, like, as an immigrant, you are coming to a new country. You shared how you had like the collegiate clubs and things like that
Yep.
to have help you. Sway, your situation's a little different. You're a young lad. You're here. You're in New York. You didn't have the African club, right? That's like in college. Tell me about your relationships. Like, how did you go about building relationships? And it's probably harder also for adults who are coming in. Like, college is a good space because there's clubs,
Right.
but when you're an adult or you're young, you don't really have that. So, can you speak to that and tell me how you were able to navigate your new relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely a challenge. Just let's take a step back. This is 98. So, no social media,
Oh yeah.
no, like, I think AOL and dial-up was starting to become a thing, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, Gen Zs won't even know what dial-up is, right? And waiting for that tone. But, it was definitely very difficult. So, you had to use the traditional means and that teams would use to connect, right? Shared hobbies, shared interests. So, I still was, I played soccer, we called it football in Nigeria, but that was another change I had to go through calling it soccer. So, played soccer, continued to play that, was part of the soccer team in high school. And so through that, started to form my own relationships and build a community of like-minded people, so to speak. But the like-mindedness wasn't centered around like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? Oh, you want to be this, you want to be that. Okay, now let's be cool now. It was your standard teenager, like, oh, you like to play, this video game. And, so starting to, open up and uh, find people and make friendships with people that had similar interests, in standard teenage way. It was especially difficult simply because you didn't have control wasn't entirely yours, right? You still had to navigate the mom, dad, can I do this? Can I go see this friend? Or can this friend come over? So that added this extra layer of like complexity to trying to form those relationships. But I think it was really in high school when, I got into sports and other things that, I really started to find like-minded peers to be friends with. Middle school was especially difficult. And I think, as someone mentioned earlier, it's cool to be Nigerian now. It wasn't then.
Mhm.
Most people's idea of any African country at the time was whatever, you know, uh, refugee situation that CNN was broadcasting at the time. But now, due to the social media and other things, people are exposed to experiences of others globally. So true experiences of others globally. So I think for me, navigating that was especially challenging, but it got better over time. You just, again, find a community of like-minded people in standard teenager ways, and just foster the relationships that way.
Yeah, it sounds like taking a risk and being uncomfortable. That's what I'm hearing, but in a way where there's synergy, right? And I think that can
Yes,
be applied for any age. Find your group of
absolutely.
people and jump out there. I want to go back to this, like, as this was comment was made a couple of times. It wasn't cool to be African then, and I remember, right. So I was fortunate to people didn't know I was African, right, until my mother came to school and she started speaking. It's like, oh, you African? But I really want to transition because this is a real thing that people navigate. It's the accent, right? The accent gives it away. I want to talk about how you all were able to navigate that, but in career. We are, as Nigerians, and you all are Nigerians, probably one of the most ambitious people on the planet. You know, you can do the work. We're reading all the books. We're getting the credentials, and then it's time to apply. Can you talk a little bit about like your career experience and how you were able to navigate being African, right? Or overcoming like speaking with an accent and being bold enough to apply to these positions. You all are very successful people. And I want you to all to be able to speak to your experience to people who are listening and may kind of be navigating that career space.
I think, when having an accent, yeah, I've kind of seen it like a superpower.
Mm.
You're different, right? When you step into the room, you're different. And you kind of have to see, how do you want to navigate this difference, right? When you're different, people are curious, right? And this is where, you want this, you want to, where you want to kind of build a personality that attracts people to whatever it is that you want to navigate, right? So, when I went to college, I went to HBCU. We had the African societies and things like that, right? But for many, and as I said, it was in rural Maryland also. But for many people, they had not met an African before, right? And they asked questions. Some of them, you know, very ignorant questions, and the other ones, very curious questions, right? So, having an accent that automatically kind of separates you from your peers. How you decide to navigate that is completely up to you. There is a stereotype, right? You know, it's up to you to play into that or not, right? It depends on what the stereotype is, right? So as you said, Nigerians or Africans are very ambitious, and then there's the other part, right? So so that being said, the first thing is, again, as when you come coming into America, and again, I came here alone, so I had to have I had to do the groundwork for myself on my own, right? And I have to have something that attracted people to stay, to help me get to where I am today. Um, there's an African proverb, right? If you want to go, we were talking about friends earlier. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, right? And that's something that in the back of my mind, right? Always, always. And it's for anybody who's coming to America. You want to think about that. Do you want to go fast or do you want to go far? My career is 15 years, right? I did not get here on my own. I had nobody. So me, 15-year-old to now, it's the community I've been able to build, right? Of being authentically to who I am. I am a Nigerian woman, right? I'm not American. There's nothing wrong with being American, but I'm a Nigerian woman. And people want to know about that. People want to know who you are. People want to know what you're about. People want to know, what makes you you. So in terms of what my advice, what I would say to someone who is coming in, you have to know what makes you you, and when people and you're different already, embrace the difference.
Thank you for that. I'm going to pass it over to Naya. Naya, you have a pretty extensive resume,
Yeah.
very successful. You worked at the top companies in the world. tell me about how you were able to navigate this journey and in the career, and just kind of being this different immigrant, right? This different person in this space, but then still being able to land these amazing roles.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what Amarachi said about how you choose to navigate it is up to you, because we all come here from different levels, right? If we're specifically talking about accent, our levels to what types of accent we have is different, right? So I feel like knowing, coming in and being true to yourself and knowing like, hey, maybe I talk too fast. Maybe I'm not clear with my words. Those are the things that you have to identify and recognize for yourself. I like the idea of like being authentic to yourself, but sometimes, like, to be transparent and honest, like, we need to work on ourselves, like, period. How we present ourselves, how we public speak, depending on what you're targeting, right? For example, when I moved to the United States, my first freshman year, so I used to talk fast. I'm a fast talker, right? Fast talker. And I remember my very first presentation was American history. And I was just there and I was just talking so fast. And no one could really hear what I was saying. They were like, okay. And I remember someone like coming, just someone I knew in the class, just like, Nai, do you know you talk very fast? And do you know that sometimes like you interject like some Nigerian lingo in your public speaking? I'm like, huh. I'm actually going to take a step back and record myself speaking. I saw it, right? It was there. I would say things like as in, like if you're Nigerian, you know what as in means. Like I would say as in front of a class, right? So that problem was there, right? So there's a thin line between like being your authentic self. I know that, okay, there are things that you need to work on to prepare you for certain roles. Like if you want to work for a top company, if you want to be a CEO one day, like those things are important, whether you like it or not. And personally, have been able to navigate is being able to take feedback. Like every time as I progress in my career and I present, there are different aspects of my public speaking that I work on. One is I talk fast. I respond too fast. So I've had to work on that, like pausing, listening to the question, so that I'm audible to the audience and things like that. So it's really how you navigate it. You need to know, like, if you're fine with speaking and your accent doesn't hinder like your progress in your journey or your career, like that's fine. But if you know like that's there, and when you talk to the public, like it's hard for people to understand what you're saying, then maybe there's some things that you need to work on, right? I'm not saying go become an Americana tomorrow, become an American tomorrow. No, I'm saying like be open to taking feedback. If you're presenting at the workplace, present to your peers or people who your close associates and ask for feedback. Like, hey, what are things I need to work on? How do I become better in presenting or talking publicly? So that's there. And the second is like let your work speak for you, right? You do great work. Senior manager hears, oh, Naya, there's this girl called Naya. She's the something senior consultant, and she did this and this. They don't know that you have an accent. They don't know who you are. They just know that Naya did a great work, right? So many times, like the work just speaks for itself. Like the hard work that you put in just will speak for yourself. So that's why it's so important to be professional, to be prepared. And that ties back into that being able to take feedback when it comes to like speaking or talking. Because whether you like it or not, sometimes like because we were born and raised, for us I was born and raised in Nigeria or any African country, we have an accent. And that's the truth of the matter. Like we accept that first. But if there are areas that we need to work on that will help us progress in our career, then let's make sure that we're taking those opportunities and using those resources to become better. And just to give an example of that, Toastmasters. If anyone has ever heard of Toastmasters, or when you get here, find the closest Toastmaster to you, whether it's in your workplace, on campus, they're offsite ones as well, they're virtual ones. That's a great communication platform to get engaged with that would just help you be more audible. I think that's the word I'm looking for. is not for you to change who you are, but make sure that as you're speaking, you're audible, because it's important as you're growing and climbing your career that people can actually hear what you're saying, because you're in the United States of America and not in Ghana or Nigeria or Cameroon or whatever African country. So that's my perspective and that's my experience so far.
Yeah, thank you for that share. I will have a question for you, Soye. You've been here the longest of the three. I'm interested to know, how has your experience and journey shaped your identity and your goals today?
Yeah, so mine, so I think for me, given that I was able to, I came in, in my early teens. By the time I had to navigate the corporate world, I'd learned to code switch, right? The nice little code switching that we all kind of learn to do over time. So um, to speak to the whole accent conversation, by that point, I'd learned to code switch. So it was less of a challenge that I had to face. However, you still had the name, but like Dr. Amarachi said, being different can sometimes be your superpower. It can also, sometimes, many times, it's an icebreaker. Out of curiosity, people will ask you questions because you stand out, and so you can use that as a segue into other conversations or other topics. How is being an immigrant shaped my identity? I think understanding the sacrifices that were made for me to be where I am, sacrifices in the part of my parents, other people in my life, and that understanding that and having that fuel you to succeed. You almost feel like there's these sets of people looking up to you that you can't let down, and so that shapes and it's this extra battery that pumps that fuels me in everything that I do, anything that I do, whether it's career or in my personal life. So I think in that has been a key part of what has shaped my identity, is that all these people that are looking to me, especially being the firstborn, it's just there's this weight that comes with
Yes.
so that has definitely shaped my identity a lot, and also like being connected also to back home and seeing where there are many people with talent, with ambition, with goals and visions, but don't have the opportunity or the platform to be able to sort of like rocket launch those visions or those ambitions, gives you perspective and allows for you to sort of appreciate the opportunity and not waste it, as well. So that is, I think, what fuels me and maybe a lot of us in our careers and our personal life.
Yeah, well, I definitely want to give you all your flowers here today, and just hearing your stories and seeing your very impressive resumes. You all are phenomenal. I've always been interested, I always found it interesting that when you're in the Western world and you go to another country, you're an expat. But when you come from a third world country into the Western world, you're an immigrant. And oftentimes the word immigrant is looked at very negatively. But again, you all are amazing, powerful, brilliant people. I want to give you an opportunity today to redefine the word immigrant. And so, what would you say an immigrant is to the immigrant navigating this country? What is your new definition? And I will give you like 10 seconds to think. I'm going to start with Soye because he's smiling at me. What what would be your new definition of immigrant if you could redefine it?
Well, let's start with, the whole purpose of this organization: resilient, adaptable, The very essence of being an immigrant meant that you were able to accept change and navigate change and succeed at changing. So that is what I would redefine an immigrant as, someone that's adaptable and resilient.
I love it. I love it. Naya.
I mean, I feel like Soya has really summarized it for us. But to add to what he said, it's really you're going like against all the odds and all the challenges that are going to be thrown at you, and you're still because of the resiliency that we come with as Africans. Like we are ready for it. We've been raised for this. We're able to just go against all of that and put in all the effort and make it work whichever way. I mean, just look at everyone on the call. We all have different journeys, um, and we came here at different times, and yet like we've been able to navigate it somehow through different ways. So that's how I see an immigrant. It's like through all the odds, through all the challenges, all the roadblocks, you're gonna make it. You will still make it. Just put your head down, and just really focus and utilize all the resources. There's more resources out there than during our time, years back. And you just need to make sure that you're utilizing those resources to create your own story and your own journey. And don't be afraid to reach out to me or anybody on the call or anyone on the calls, that come after this, and just use that to create your own story and mark your own successes.
Thank you for that. Dr. Amarachi.
I think I started with we're all migrants, right? Everyone on this soil, everyone on this American soil is a migrant, depending on when you came. And everyone had their challenges, right? Whether it's you that went through it or your parents went through it, someone has to go through it. Okay? So, as Naya said, you're ready for it. You have it in you. Everything that is put in front of you, you will. You will. It's an obstacle, right? And obstacles are made to be knocked, to be knocked down, right? So you will overcome it. So we're all migrants. That's it. We're all migrants. Donald Trump is a migrant. Come on. Oh, hold on. What happened? Okay, hold on. Okay,
Okay, we're back.
we're back. I said, hold on. What happened? So everyone is a migrant, right? And being from Africa, Nigeria, wherever you're from, the resilience, right? We are so resilient. You put a Nigerian anywhere, they will grow. So and that's kind of how you have to think about yourself, right? Wherever you're going to be dropped at, put your head down, as Naya said, focus on your goals, focus on your plan, and reach out, if and use everyone as your resource. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And these are things I live by. So that's how I'm redefining migrants today.
Yes, thank you all for just sharing your story of boldness, of pure resilience. In the spirit and the theme of this organization, I want you all to end with saying your name, what you do for work, and I'm a resilient immigrant. I truly think that definition of immigrant, you all have redefined it today. Bold, powerful, resilient, just powerful is the word that I'm getting. I'm just thinking of all your stories. And so I really want to end inspiring the next generation of immigrants who come to this country. You don't have to run from it. You don't have to hide from it, but it's really a badge of honor, in my opinion. So you can say your name, your title, and I am a resilient immigrant. Go on, Soye. Take the lead.
Hi, my name is Abisoya Lawrentaba. I'm a software engineer and I am a resilient immigrant.
Hi, my name is Naya Olalemi. I'm a business consultant and I am a resilient immigrant.
Hi, my name is Dr. Martinije. I am a double boarded psychiatrist and I am a resilient immigrant.
Oh,
Yes, yes, yes. You all are. Thank you again for sharing your stories. Again, my name is Nancy Tai Aragbai, and I had the privilege of being the host of today's panel, Resilient Immigrant. Host these discussions to equip African immigrants with the knowledge they need to thrive and transform their lives. I hope you all were able to pull inspiration from these amazing stories that were shared today. Please share, like this video, connect with these amazing people on LinkedIn, and whatever other platforms you all are on. Instagram, LinkedIn, because they're top professionals. They are there. I promise you can find them. Thank you again for sharing your story. Again, please like and share this platform with any immigrant that you may know who may need to draw inspiration. I appreciate you all. Thank you for being here tonight.
thank you,
Yeah,
Nancy.
thank you, Nancy.
See you
Bye.
again.